2 score years ago, a great American whose symbolic spirit we shall walk with today told the nation about a dream. His vision of a beloved community came as a great beacon of hope for our Americans who had been sentenced to hostile communities. It came as a reverie of redemption for all the dreamers of democracy. But 40 years later, America is still not close to realizing his dream of democracy. 40 years later, the life of the American is still sadly crippled by the chains of isolation and the manacles of meaninglessness. 40 years later, the American lives on a lonely island of poverty amidst a vast ocean of opportunity. 40 years later, the American has built the four walls of militarism, cynicism, racism, and materialism between him and his neighbors. In so many words, the American lives not in the dream of integration, but in the reality of separation. It has been 40 years since that speech, but yet nowhere in this democracy is there the unity of a beloved community. The communities of this nation have still yet to deal with the perennial problems of poverty, violence, and miseducation that continue to bind the lives of their citizens. There are some that would say that nowhere is this more evident than in New Orleans, where daily abandoned men revolt violently against their unloving community. Some would argue that though the citizens often cry, "Peace, peace," they do not love their neglected neighbor enough to sacrifice for him. Some will contend that this community, just like all communities across America, is degenerating instead of regenerating. But far from representing the demise of democracy, New Orleans will represent the birth of a new age of altruism. In New Orleans, there will be a positive revolution of love to oppose the violence that tyrannizes the community. It is in New Orleans that vast monuments of hope will be shaped. Peace will be forged, and nonviolence will take concrete form. I say this because I see August 29th, 2005, not as an end of order, but as a beginning of a movement. 2 years ago, when our fellow man was besieged by the floods of hopelessness, it was the seekers of solidarity who lent a hand to humanity. It was the seekers of solidarity who plunged into the sea of sacrifice and sought to guide their fellow man from the turbulent waves of weariness to the majestic shores of harmony and healing. It was not duty, honor, or even country that awakened this spirit, but love. This love was a spontaneous, uncalculating love that forged through the chaos to create community. If Martin Luther King could have witnessed this moment in human history, he would have rejoiced in seeing the glory of love still alive in the lives of men. As the Reverend would remind us, this great moment in history is further proof that when man rises, love represents the most powerful force in the universe. This love is a creative, redemptive, understanding goodwill to humanity. When we rise to this level of love, we overflow with creative energy. When we rise to this level of love, we rise above all fears and forge through the chaos. When we rise to this level of love, we fathom the depths of our spirit and emerge triumphantly to create community. This love was the salvation of this city. For this love transcends despair and delivers miracles to the hearts of men. But as we expand our perspective on New Orleans and take a panoramic view of our condition, we must frankly admit that the forces of love never gave their full resources. They never united for a goal, a faith, a meaning. For those abandoned men at the edge of the abyss, our collective efforts represented only momentary glimmers of hope amidst the infinite nights of hopelessness. If love is to take concrete form in this city, we must become organized in our altruism. We must press 1,000 goals into one. We must unite for peace in New Orleans. Until we will as one towards this profound horizon, we will never possess the power to combat the root causes of the chaos. So even though we must now take on the hardest and highest goal, I will tell you, my fellow citizens, that I still have a dream in New Orleans. I have a dream in New Orleans that one day the boulevard of Martin Luther King, a place flooded in fear, a place ravaged by rage, will be transformed into a neighborhood of non-violence. I have a dream in New Orleans that one day my children will live in a community where all children have enough food in their stomachs, enough culture in their minds, enough love in their hearts to liberate their higher humanity. I have a dream in New Orleans that one day, whenever a sacred soul is lost to the inhumanity of man, our whole city will turn away from diversions and gather together to honor the dignity and worth of his beloved personality. I have a dream in New Orleans that one day Catholic and Hindus, Baptists and Buddhists, Muslims and Jews will give themselves to peace from the essence of their being and sing to their God new songs of love and healing. I have a dream in New Orleans that one day artists and philosophers, poets and priests, musicians and saints will come marching in from their long nights in chambers of cynicism across the deserts, through the wilderness, and on towards this promising land, and one day assemble around this sacred city to construct a Parthenon of peace. I have a dream in New Orleans that one day Chinese and Japanese, Pakistani and Indian, American and Iranian will rise up in a massive act of love to oppose the tyrant of our town. And one day, under the oak trees, outside his cave, our people will pray together, fast together, suffer together, and wait together until that day when the tyrant emerges from his darkness and sees that behind the harsh and chaotic appearances of the world, there is still a benevolent and unified force. I have a dream in New Orleans. It is with this dream that I come back to New Orleans with every day. We have a great opportunity to build a beloved community, a community where all people live together as family and respect the dignity and value of all human personalities. We must keep moving towards that vision. Time is cluttered with the wreckage of communities that passively accept violence. We must follow a different path. A world sick with modern maladies waits for this new kind of dream, and this new kind of New Orleans. The great challenge facing mankind today is to solve the fundamental problem of man's inhumanity to man in a new and creative manner. Whether it's war in the streets or war in the Middle East, there is no military solution to these conflicts. I take fearful pause and see that here in New Orleans, the violent possess pistols and shotguns to terminate other citizens. But in the larger scope of the world, the violent now possess atomic bombs and ballistic missiles to exterminate whole cities. We must work hard at expanding the philosophy of nonviolence to address the most pressing problem of our time. Without a working alternative to violence, the neglected people of the world will continue down that blind alley of meeting physical force with physical force. We have a glorious opportunity in New Orleans to become the symbol of peace in the world. Now is not the time for our goodwill to rest. Now is the time for the free spirit of New Orleans to be carried away by the reveries of the Reverend. Now is the time to usher in a new age of nonviolence. For in this age, we poetic people will shape the destiny of this democracy. We musical men will transform the discords of despair into symphonies of solidarity. And we, the dreamers of democracy, will be the fathers in founding a nonviolent America. Thank you.
Thanks, Charles. I appreciate it.